I would do something new here and a little exciting, and that is go live. So we are getting the Indy Drills podcast live here on YouTube. Happy to have all of you joining in to watch the show both live and if you're checking it out later. Happy to be here with you doing the Indy Drills podcast. As you may know, this is a DB podcast, and I don't know that there are many of those out there because everybody wants to talk about wide receivers and the guys that are scoring the touchdowns. No one wants to talk about the DBs, of course, until they get beat or they get a pass interference or they give up a 5-yard curl on third down. You know how that goes. But anyway, if this is your first time here listening to the show or anything like that, checking it out, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Not only do I have the Indy Drills podcast on here, I've got a bunch of videos, an absolute ton of videos on how-tos about playing defensive back. A bunch of stuff here. On top of that, if you don't know by now, I am the author of this good book right here, 101 DB Tips. All right? This is over 2 decades of experience and stuff that I have said over and over, stuff that was said to me quite a bit when I was playing, and things that I go over on and on and on when I am training guys in person. So I'm just letting you know, if you wanted all of the knowledge that was in this book, it would take a whole lot of one-on-one sessions or group sessions with me, and that could run you hundreds to thousands of dollars. You're getting all of that knowledge in this book right here for a fraction of the cost. So everything in there from how to play in the slot, how to play corner, how to play safety, how to train in the offseason, how to study film, just about everything you need to know as a defensive back is all wrapped up in this good book right here, 101 DB Tips, available in soft cover like this, or you can get the ebook version delivered to you immediately. So I'm going to have a link to that in the description down below when this show is over. If you need it right now, you can go to 101dbtips.com to get your copy. Play DB, coach DB, train DBs. This is the book for you. This is it. I wish I would have had this when I was playing defensive back in high school or even in college, because that's where I really started to gain my knowledge. I was just out there as a high school player playing defensive back just on pure athletic ability. And then whatever I picked up on Saturday and Sundays watching the game. So again, 101 DB Tips. Also going to have a link to the All Eyes DB Camp members area. More on that down the road. Let's get into the current news, current hot topics. The only thing really to talk about here outside of the NFL kicking off tonight with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, a rematch of the AFC Championship game, where the Ravens defensive backs the Chiefs defensive backs really smothered the Ravens passing game. Yes, they did get a couple big plays off. Zay Flowers had a couple big plays in the game. Massive fumble going into the end zone. We won't talk about that for Zay, a South Florida product. But anyway, the Chiefs defensive backs really smothered things. There's no more L'Jarius Sneed, so it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the guys that are there, there's still a great nucleus of guys in Kansas City to go out there and get the job done. So it's going to be cool seeing that. And then, the Ravens have a first rounder in their secondary by the name of Nate Wiggins, he who ran a 4.240 in the combine. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in with the Ravens there and how they're doing things. So from that standpoint, football is on the field tonight. We're going to get a chance to see some defensive backs play. But outside of that, my man, Patrick Surtain, a kid that I coached in high school, continue to train to this day and age, Alabama Crimson Tide, prospect product, let me say, not prospect product, first round pick, broke the bank the other day. He is now the highest paid defensive back in history, in NFL history. We know these things change a lot, but as it stands right now, $96 million contract is the richest for any defensive back ever to have played the game. So he is hard work has paid off. I've been calling him the prototype for years. That's been my nickname for him. And he's just performed at every level, high school, college, and now in the NFL, widely considered the best cornerback in the league and going to be paid like he is, $77 million, 77.5 to be exact, guaranteed. So the Denver Broncos lock Pat Surtain up the way he locks up opposing wide receivers. they've got him for the next 4 years. So that's something they just don't have to worry about there in Denver. Extremely, extremely happy for the young man, hard worker. He's made all the right moves, doing the right things, and he's being handsomely rewarded. So very nice to see that. He, like I said, moves to the top of the list. Here's the top 5 defensive backs in terms of pay. All right. Not anything else, just in terms of pay. You guys may or may not know this list. Of course, Pat comes in at number 1 and getting $24 million a year now that he's got this new deal. Second is Jair Alexander for the Packers, $21.3 million a year. Then there's Antoine Winfield, who recently signed his deal. He's getting $21 million a year. AJ Terrell, who also recently re-upped with the Atlanta Falcons, getting $20.5 million a year. And then Denzel Ward, who got a new deal last year, I believe it was, that now pays him $20.3 million. So those are your top 5 guys in terms of pay in the league. Guess what, though? None of these guys are making $30 million like the receivers are. See what I mean, man? See what I mean? It's all about offense in this world. But hey, we're the bad guys or the good guys, however you want to look at it. Someone's got to lock these guys down, and these 5 guys right here definitely do that, as well as a bunch of others do. I don't want to sound like a WNBA player, but, equal pay for equal work. It is extremely difficult to play cornerback in this league, to play defensive back, but especially cornerback. And once again, on this show, I will maintain that is the most difficult position on the field. Forget about quarterbacks and their long play calls. And, I get that they've got to manage a team, but the rules and everything else, just the athleticism that's needed to mirror a guy that you really can't even touch in this league is extremely difficult. And then all of the mental stuff you've got to deal with, because no one really, like I said, cares until tragedy strikes their corner, unless you're going off and picking off a whole bunch of passes like Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland did the last couple of years. But that stuff's kind of rare. It's very difficult to do. So hats off to those guys, which, by the way, I'm really bummed out that we're not going to be able to see Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs to start this season out on that corner. That's something I was really, really looking forward to. We're just going to have to wait for that and see what the Cowboys do on the opposite end of Trayvon Diggs. Let's roll into some things here. One of the things that I've seen people talking about, and I did see a coach asking this on Twitter, which, by the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's DBTips101. I don't want to say one-on-one. Might have messed you up there. DBTips101. That's me on Twitter. Go ahead and give that a follow. But saw a guy asking about combo coverages. And, what's the reason for them? Why do guys have them? Back in the old days, you would just run a coverage. So it's cover 4 and you're running cover 4 all over the field, or cover 2 and it's cover 2 all over the field. And by and large, that's what most teams do. But over the last few years, you see coaches, both at the high school, college level, it's been done in the pros, but making use of combo coverages. And, why would you do something like that? First of all, what do I mean by a combo coverage? That means on one side of the field, we've got one coverage, let's just say cover 2, and to the other side of the field, we're running cover 4. So that's a combo coverage. One coverage on one side and another coverage on the other side. And most will call that cover 6, just so, 4 plus 2 is 6 for you folks that aren't that great at math. That's what it is. So if you've heard cover 6 and didn't really know what that is, kind of confused you there, you're new to the game, you want to know why are they saying cover 6, what does that mean? I know cover 3 means 3 guys back there, 4 means 4 guys back there, 6, does that mean all 6 guys back there? It doesn't make any sense. Well, that's what it is. 4 to one side, 2 to the other. 4 plus 2 is 6. So, for instance, in that situation, cover 6, you run cover 4 to the wide side of the field. And in high school and college football, with the wide hashes, you don't necessarily want to do something like play cover 2 to the wide side of the field when the team has a ball on the hash. Sometimes that could create problems for you. That's a bigger hole shot if there's a quarterback that could fit the ball out there. So you want a different solution out there, and you'd much rather have the corner play off a little bit more and force, if there's going to be a long throw made, have the long throw be short, or, some kind of screen or something of that nature. So you just feel better matching the routes on cover 4 to the wide side of the field. But on the backside, you might not want to force kind of a one-on-one situation that could happen to you if you just run 4 into the boundary as well. Because as you know, sometimes the route combinations in cover 4 can put a cornerback one-on-one going deep with a wide receiver. And if you don't necessarily love the matchup on the backside, you may want to run something like cover 2, which provides a cap, as they say. Your safety is going to be back there over a corner that may or may not be overmatched. I hate to talk like that, but that's the God's the honest truth. That does happen sometimes. Sometimes you have a matchup into that boundary that, just doesn't work for you. You don't like it. The receiver is not a good matchup for that corner. So instead of having him press and play man, or be in a cover 4 situation where he's all alone with that guy and you're helping out the offense, you can take that guy out a little bit by playing cover 2 into that boundary. So he has him hard in the flat, meaning the corner, and then there's a safety back there deep. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds. 2 to the boundary, 4 to the field. That's a combo coverage. I've seen other people do cover 2 to one side, cover 3 to the other side. There's even something called cover 8. And now cover 8 is just the reverse of cover 6. So you're going to play cover 2 to the field and quarters or cover 4 into the boundary, just to give the offense a different look, do some different things. Maybe you want to sit a corner hard into the flat to the wide side of the field because, maybe the offense, it likes to throw screens to that wide side of the field, especially if they think you're going to be falling that corner off to protect yourself deep. You can sit a corner hard into the flats, down in to the wide side of the field by playing cover 2 over there, and then into the boundary. Now, maybe you have a situation where you can play a loose cover 4 or whatever the case may be. Whatever the situation is into the boundary, you feel more comfortable playing cover 4 there as opposed to cover 2. So rather than playing 4 to the field and 2 into the boundary, you just flip it. Now it's cover 8. The math doesn't add up there. Just go with me on this. 4 into the boundary and 2 to the field. That would be considered a combo coverage. I've even seen teams play invert, all right, to the far side of the field and just play regular cover 2 where the safety is deep into the boundary. And if you don't understand what invert is, I do talk about it in the All Eyes DB Camp members area, where I, break down all of your basic coverages plus your more advanced coverages. So that's just another reason for you guys to be in that All Eyes DB Camp members area. Break down just about every coverage that's out there. And when new ones come out, I talk about in there as well. I don't have invert as on this channel. It is in the members area, but I do talk about cover 2. But just in a quick nutshell, invert is where the corner is the one that ends up playing deep like a safety, and the safety comes down and just plays like the corner would. So they just kind of switch responsibilities. That's it. That's a basic rough overview of what invert is. There are more details to it, and like I said, you could pick up on that stuff in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. All right, so that's just a look at combo coverages, a quick explanation for those of you out there that maybe have heard the term but didn't quite understand what they are. In its simplest form, it's one coverage to one side and another coverage to the other side. I covered the most basic ones that you would find: 2 and 4, 2 and 3, invert, and cover 2, things of that nature. But you can get really, really tricky with it. The only barrier is your imagination, as coaches out there will cook up a whole bunch of other stuff. But whatever the case may be, a combo coverage is one coverage to one side of the field with a different coverage on the other side. Time for the mailbag, and I love to get these questions. I get them all the time. So I'm glad that when I started this podcast, I made the mailbag a part of this. It seems like a simple thing to do, but it's always good to grab one of the questions that I get from people, whether it's via email or it's on YouTube or even from Instagram, which, by the way, at All Eyes DB Camp, if you're trying to follow me on Instagram, you can catch up with me there again at All Eyes DB Camp. I get asked questions all the time about defensive back play, and I've got this good one here. Young man says, I do pretty good mirroring receivers at the line of scrimmage and playing off, but my biggest issue is looking for the ball. Stop me if you've heard that one before, or if you have that issue. A lot of times I just won't look, and the receiver either catches the ball or I get a penalty. Sometimes I knock the ball out of his hands, but most of the time something bad happens. How can I fix this? That comes from RJ in Aurora, Colorado. By the way, Aurora has been in the news lately. And by the news, I mean Twitter. You guys can go look that stuff up yourself. It's an election year, but I don't want to get into all that stuff here. Let's fix RJ's problem. RJ, by the way, this is not an uncommon problem. This is a problem that infuriates fans out there, football fans, as they watch their teams each and every week. And there's a defensive back running down the field trying to defend the pass, doesn't look for the ball, and he either, like you pointed out, gets a penalty, doesn't see the ball, receiver catches the ball as he's trying to play his hands and do things, just trying to disrupt the receiver without actually looking for the football. How do we fix this problem? I wish I had a magic theory for you, but like most things at defensive back, this is going to take some practice for you to undo that. One of the things I could tell you, though, is the guys that do struggle with this particular problem are guys who play defense all their life. They've either been defensive backs from the day they started playing football, usually in youth football, and that's all they've ever played, never really had any experience playing anything else, especially on the offensive side of the ball. These are the guys that tend to have that issue. So with that said, one of the best things you could do is, and I know when guys go to the field and they want to train or when they're at practice, they want to do defensive back stuff. But I'm here to tell you, one of the best things you can do as a defensive back is go get with the wide receivers, go get with a quarterback, and go run routes. This is going to help you tremendously because it turns you into a wide receiver and it kind of exposes you to the wide receiver mindset. And what's the number one thing that a wide receiver does? That is catch the football. If you get into the habit of doing a little bit of that type of practice where you're running routes, looking for the ball, catching the football, it's going to change your mindset about what you're doing when that ball is coming. If you get enough practice of running a route, breaking, turning your head, looking for the ball, as from a wide receiver's perspective, it definitely can help you with this problem because if you do it enough, now you're going to take that mindset with you when you're covering a wide receiver and you're going to start to feel like a wide receiver as you're covering him. And when he looks for the ball, you're going to also look for the ball. So that's one thing you can really go do. If you find yourself in the offseason and you've got some wide receiver friends, if you talk to those people that play on the other side of the ball, if you got a quarterback friend, even just you and him can go out there because sometimes a quarterback wants to throw routes and he doesn't have any receivers. Volunteer for that. Now, he might be, you're not a polished wide receiver. He might have a problem with it. But I found that most quarterbacks, when they want to throw, they just want to throw and they'll throw that ball to anybody. So maybe in the beginning, you're not a polished wide receiver. But, through enough times and repetition with that quarterback, you can develop yourself into a wide receiver that's decent. But what will happen for you defensive back wise that will help you is that you just get in the habit of looking for the ball. This will help you, especially when you're running those bigger routes on the route tree. The 7 route, which is the corner route, the 8 route, which is the post, and the 9 route, which is the go fade, whichever one of those you're running. If you just get used to running that route and turning your head around when the ball is expected, you will this will now fold over into when you are a defensive back. You would have developed the habit of turning your head around and looking for the football, and it won't seem so foreign to you as you start covering guys after doing that. Outside of that, you would benefit a lot from at the ends of practices. Again, if you have someone that can throw the ball, maybe it's a quarterback, maybe it's a defensive back or wide receiver friend of yours that's decent throwing the ball, of just pretending that you're impressed, turning around, running down the field, and at a certain point, getting your head around. I would talk to you about doing it earlier than you think. So maybe at 7 yards, 8 yards as you're running down the field on pretending you're covering a fade route, get your head around, look for the ball. If you've got someone that's a talented thrower, he could try some back shoulder throws. So throw to your back shoulder where you turn your head around quick and then the ball's on that side and you turn yourself around. You got to kind of spin yourself around and catch the ball. Or and then, of course, the big fades, the Russell Wilson balls that I talk about that they throw really high and far and out there, and you've got to judge a ball that's deep. A lot of guys have problems with that. They'll jump too early. They'll misjudge the ball. The ball will go over their head. So do a bunch of those. Get used to seeing a deep ball. But this is going to have to take practice like anything else. There's no magic drill to it. One drill I really do like that helps guys with their ball skills is, and I do it from the sideline. So if I can just have you use your imagination here, both you guys that are watching this live on YouTube, as well as you guys that are listening to this on whatever podcast, streamer you're using, Apple, Spotify, whatever, you guys just listening, try to imagine this. So we're on the sidelines. You pick one of the yard lines, let's just say the 30-yard line, and you begin by backpedaling. And then at a certain point, the person throwing the ball raises the ball up and you make a full 180 turn. So that means now you have your back completely turned to the person with the ball and you're looking in the other direction, running to the opposite sideline. And that person throwing the ball throws the ball either right over your head or slightly to the right or left of you. After they throw the ball, they yell ball. So you're turning and you're seeing the ball late. So if you've looked over your right shoulder, you've got to locate the football and make a play on it. If the ball's on this side, you just simply get your hands up and you play the ball at its highest point. Always try to catch the ball at its highest point. But if you look this way and the ball's on the opposite side, you just flip your head around like a center fielder in baseball and you go feel that ball at its highest point on the other side and you make the catch. Sometimes that ball will be directly over your head. That is the toughest one. I don't care what you're playing, receiver, DB, or you are playing in the outfield, in center field. Ask any outfielder in baseball, what's the toughest ball? That's the ball hit right at them, or the ball hit directly over the top of their head that they've got to make that play. But if you get used to judging a ball thrown from that angle right behind you and directly over your head, you will be so much better now when you're in a normal game situation and you turn your head around and the ball is coming from where it normally comes from a quarterback, which is off to the side of you. Very rare does a ball come directly over your head unless you're a post safety, a free safety, or somebody in cover 3 or cover 1, and they're trying to throw a post route over your head. For you cornerbacks, you're never going to really get that situation unless there's a rollout. And how often does that happen where a guy rolls out and throws the ball right over your head? The ball is going to be coming from the side. But if you've had a whole bunch of reps of doing that drill that I just said with judging a ball that's coming straight from behind you, it's going to seem so much easier when it comes from the side. So that's a few things that you can do to help yourself with that. Outside of that, this is something you're going to have to get out of you're going to have to deal with this in practice. So practice is not the game. Practice is the time for you to work on some skills, sharpen some skills that are good, and really work on the things that are weaknesses. And if you realize this, RJ, that this is a weakness for you, you're going to have to program yourself to get that fixed while you're in practice. So as you're running down the field in 1-on-1, 7-on-7 situations, or team, practice getting your head around. Now, this might mean that in the early stages of you doing it, it's uncomfortable, doesn't feel natural. So maybe you misjudge a ball, whatever, you don't do it correctly. And, you fail a few times and you might have to hear your coach. The best thing you could do is go communicate with that coach and say, hey, coach, I'm really trying to work on getting my head around. And I want to do it here in practice. I know I'm going to, blow things here or there, but I really am trying to work on this weakness. He would have to respect that, wouldn't he? I mean, he can't be that much of a jerk off as a coach to hear you explain it that way and not want you to fix it. He might even be able to offer you some tips on how you can do that better. But I guarantee you, your coach would love to have you do better at turning your head around and making a play on the football, as opposed to having it be caught right when you're right there on the receiver's hip, which is a tragedy, or getting the dreaded penalty, which is very easy to do in high school football. High school football referees are very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very easy for them to throw flags and call pass interference. It's a difficult thing for them to understand what pass interference is, and they tend to err on the side of calling it as opposed to not calling it. So I'm sure your coach doesn't want to see that. So if you explain to him that you're trying to work on this, he may be able to help you and might be okay with it. The final question is, when do I look for the football? That's a tricky question because it's not one of those things where I could sit here and tell you exactly when you're at 8 yards or, when you're 15 yards down the field. That depends on a lot of things. The particular route that's being run. A lot of it is instinct. If you cover guys enough, you're just going to kind of get a feeling of when that ball is coming, outside of just the plain obvious of you're running down the field with a wide receiver, and when he looks, you look, as a basic rule. When he looks back for the ball, you look back for the ball. Now, we all know there's some tricky situations where a wide receiver who's good will look for the ball, get you to turn your head, and then he breaks on a comeback. Hey, if he does that and they can complete a comeback, if you guys are high school football players and they throw comebacks versus press and they can complete them, and by complete them, I mean more than one in a game, God bless you, man. You played against a really good quarterback and receiver and a really good offense, because rarely do you ever see that route thrown. So we could just go with the general rule that when the receiver looks, you look. The other thing that I'm going to tell you here, and get this cleared with your coach, because this could be kind of controversial. Some of your coaches are super conservative when it comes to this. I personally was not as a coach. Even if you're a step behind on a wide receiver, and I'm going on the assumption that he's not drastically faster than you. If you guys are roughly the same speed, or you may even be faster, even if you're a step behind, get your head around. Because here's how I look at it. There's three things that can happen on a deep ball when it's thrown. Number one, the ball could be underthrown. Okay. Number two, the ball could be thrown exactly right on time. Perfect throw in stride. Number three, ball is overthrown. So let's talk about what can happen when any one of these three things can happen. If the ball is underthrown and you don't have your head around, ball bounces off of you, or the receiver could run into you trying to stop for the ball, and we either don't get the interception or we end up with the penalty, right? Most likely it's a pass breakup, though. A lot of times that just ends up being a pass breakup. Ball hits you in the helmet, fell off your back, whatever. Receiver couldn't go through you to make the catch. A lot of times that's what happens. If it's a pinpoint throw, even if you just tried to play his hands, there's a really good chance you probably wouldn't have made that play. Anyway, you just got to tackle a guy and make a catch. So that's a good result for the offense. Number three, if it's an overthrow, then it's a good result for us on defense. They don't catch the ball, no harm, no foul. So out of the three scenarios that could take place, two of them are probably good for the defense, right? A pass breakup if that ball's thrown short, or it's just an incomplete pass, or an incomplete pass when the ball is overthrown because no one's going to catch it. Only one out of those three has a chance of really hurting us, and that is a perfect pinpoint throw. You guys that are in high school, and a lot of you guys that are in college, that is not the norm. An in stride pinpoint throw on a deep ball, 40, 50 plus yards down the field, does not happen. 30, 40. Once you start getting to 30, the accuracy really falls off. That is not something that happens very often. So a step behind, get your head around, because two of the three things that can happen there are good for us. You can really be good if you've gotten your head around and that ball's underthrown, which is what happens a lot. A lot of the deep balls are underthrown in high school. And if you're a step behind and you turn your head around, that's an easy interception for you. Too many times I see guys just running with their head, with their back to the quarterback. They don't want to look. The ball's underthrown. And if they just turned their head around, they would have gotten themselves an easy interception. I will end this by saying this. This is where it really pays off for you to watch film. Know who you're going up against. If you're going up against a quarterback with a cannon that can really get it out there, you might want to think twice about, getting your head around super early, or if you're a step or two behind. If he's accurate on those deep throws and he can make a lot of those pinpoint throws, you might want to think twice about it. If he's a line drive throw guy, though, on those deep balls, I would strongly consider getting my head around even when I'm a half step or a step behind, because they'll try to missile that ball right by your helmet. And if you turn your head around, you're going to get those interceptions. Truth of the matter is, guys, if you don't look for the ball, if you are not trying to get the football, you're just not going to get these interceptions. You're not going to pile up the interceptions if you are play the hands guy or just look at the wide receiver in the face guy. You're just not. You're not coming out of the season with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 double-digit interceptions. If that's your mindset, you're not going to be that guy. You really have got to turn into the guy that will look for the football like he plays wide receiver. The guys that played wide receiver and come over to DB, they tend not to have this problem, and they end up being guys that pile up the interceptions. Trayvon Diggs was a wide receiver. As a matter of fact, there's video out there of him saying he cried the day that Alabama moved him from wide receiver to DB. He cries no more. This guy really understands offense. He looks for the football. It's the offensive wide receiver mentality that he brought to defensive back. Matter of fact, a lot of the great defensive backs in history came from the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Deion Sanders was a quarterback in high school. So a lot of these guys switched over from offense, and they bring an offensive mentality. If you've never played on offense, you're going to have to develop that. And that's play wide receiver. That's get to looking for the football, because you can't catch a ball that you don't see, guys. So consider getting your head around sooner. If you're playing a team that you know throws a lot of back shoulders, or they get those fades out really quick, look sooner after you exit the line of scrimmage with the wide receiver. You know, maybe normally you look back on a deep ball 10 or 15 yards down the field. Maybe now you look a little faster, 5, 7, 10 yards. You get your head around, know who you're up against. The line drive throw guys, the weak arm quarterbacks, make it a point to get your head around. That's good for about 2 or 3 extra interceptions every year. Take my word for it. But as always, same thing I do when I'm in training, clear that with your coach. All right. Don't go out there and just do some things, and when it doesn't happen, say, oh, this guy on the internet told me that. No. Don't do that. Your number one job is to do what it is that coach is telling you. DB coach, defensive coordinator. You got to make those guys happy. Outside of that, though, use these things to up your game, take your game to the next level. And as always, communicate with your coach. Hope I made myself clear on that. RJ, I hope I answered your question. For the rest of you guys out there, like I said, I love to get the questions. You could submit your question if you're watching this on YouTube in that comment section down below. That's a great place for me to grab questions for my next Indy Drills podcast. So go ahead, log your question in. I will find your question in the comments section. Or if you're not able to do that, or you're just listening to me on the stream and you're not watching this on YouTube, you can send an email to cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. Again, that's cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. All right, time for the main topic here on the show today. And I think this is a pretty good topic for me to have, especially in this time of year. Something I talk about when camp comes around every year. And we've just gotten out of camps. We're early on in the season. But if you follow along with what I'm talking about here in this particular part of the program, you will really see an improvement in your play. It's not one of these things that's going to take you from one game to the next, from one day to the next. You're just going to turn into a superstar player. But you're going to find yourself by the end of the season, you have improved so much. And it's just a very, very simple thing. A lot of times, guys, the improvement of your play is just really simple things that maybe you didn't think about, or maybe you just haven't given enough energy to. But this happens to be one of those things. If you're like most players at practice, you do the reps when it's your turn, and when then you jog back to the end of the line. You're off to the sidelines. You wait till your next turn. While you're there, you guys let your mind wander. You're thinking about a homework assignment. You're thinking about some girl. You're thinking about something that went on in school, a PlayStation, whatever. All kinds of things can enter into your heads when you're young players, even when not even just young players. Professional players got it going on too, because they're living real lives. A lot of these guys are married. They've got kids. They've got a whole lot of things to wonder. So I'm really speaking to all levels, youth football, high school, college, all of you guys. Perhaps you will occasionally play over in your mind what just happened on your rep. Maybe you do that, especially if you did it wrong. And then within a few moments of doing that, your brain goes on to something else. It's one of the more difficult things to control. But I'm here to tell you, I don't know if you guys realize it. It may not seem like it, but the majority of your time during practice is spent waiting. Think about that. That's really what happens most of the time. You're really sitting around waiting. It might not seem that way because you get out of breath doing all these drills, but you're either waiting your next turn in Indy, or your next turn for your group to go in 7-on-7 or team. Most guys waste that time. All right. It's the time you spend most of your time waiting. And a lot of guys waste that time. It's the biggest amount of time that you spend out there. The most common defensive back is only active mentally when they're involved physically. You can't let that happen. You want to be a really savvy defensive back, and that improves not only fast, but over the course of a whole season. You want to make use of that downtime between your reps. So early on, you just had camp, but we're early on in the season here as we're having this broadcast. Spend your time in Indy waiting for your next rep, going over in your mind how to master the drill that you guys are doing. All right. That Indy period is super important. Now, I know for a lot of guys, it's just like some guys really hate Indy. But if you learn to love that, that's where you're going to make your most improvements as a player. It's on the individual skills and sharpening the tools that you need. Perhaps you even, perhaps you could even go through the steps of a drill off to the side as like a rehearsal until it's your time to go again. That would be rather smart for you to do. Now, of course, this requires some energy, and I know sometimes you don't really feel like practicing, but man, it's you have an hour and a half to 2 hours to get better at practice. And this is a way for you to do that. When you think about it, that's not that long for you to focus. 1.5, 2 hours on something you're supposed to love. Now, once you've reached the point of understanding how to do the drill, now you want to spend your downtime watching guys who are better than you at the drill, right? There's always a guy, there's always a drill out there that a guy does better than you. You want to really spend that time analyzing and watching that guy. Study what it is that they're doing that makes them so good at it. And you will pick some of that up and you can add that to your game and make yourself even better at that drill. This is the way you learn. You can learn both from the coach that's giving instruction to you when you go, as well as instruction to others when they're going. And then you could just watch and learn from the players. You're activating all the senses here. You're seeing, you're listening, and then when you go, that's your physical activity that's doing the drill. You're going through the drill. When you master the techniques, you guys win the reps. When you win the reps, you make big plays on Friday, on Saturday, or Sunday, or, hell, we play football on every day of the week now. But when you're out there and the big lights are shining and you have mastered the skills to the point where you just can't do them wrong, that's when the big plays start piling up. If you've ever watched guys play and they just get on a hot streak, it seems like each and every week they're around the football, they're scooping up a fumble, they're getting an interception, they're making a big hit. This is what happens. It's just they have been putting the work in, and maybe it didn't show right away, but then it just starts to compound, and now it's just flowing, and that's where you want to get yourself to. When it comes to the 7-on-7 and team periods early in the year, which is where we are now, spend the time hearing the calls made by the defensive coordinator. Just do that, all right? A lot of times you guys don't even think about that part. Just go over there, sit and listen, hear the call that he's making. If you're new to the defense and you're still learning it, imagine yourself playing the play with the call that was just made. So you're not in right now, but you heard the call, and now you see the defense that's out there, and you just imagine yourself in there and what you would do while you're in there based on the call. All right. You see that motion. If there's supposed to be a check, make the check in your mind. Pretend that you're already in there. These few things will help you learn the defense by doing this. You'll pick it up a whole lot faster. All right. The faster you learn the defense, the more comfortable you can be out there. And if you're a guy that's on the bench because you haven't learned the defense yet, the faster you learn the defense, quicker you can get out there. You're literally stealing reps by using your mind, right? You don't always have to be physically involved to have a rep in a game or in a practice. When you do this, you'll quickly begin to understand where everyone is supposed to be on each call. So even when you know where you're supposed to be in the defense on each and every call, don't just stop there. Start using your mind to figure out and learn where everyone else is supposed to be. All right. Once you've learned your job on the defense, it's time for you to understand how the whole thing fits together. I've said it 1,000 times. Football is the ultimate team game. So it's a good time for you to learn and understand where everyone else is on the field. That prevents you from making mistakes. It also allows you to be a better communicator. Once you've learned all that, let's start paying attention to the offense while you have that downtime. If you're a starter and the twos are in, watch the offense and how the offense tries to attack your defense. Pay attention to where guys are lining up offensively and what does that mean? What does the offense do when the wide receiver takes this big split, or he has a tight split like that, or they line up in a bunch, or they line up in a stack, or the running back is, deeper, or he's up. Like, start to notice those little things. Understanding your team's offense will give you an understanding of just how offenses work in general. A lot of offenses are the same. Yeah, they might have little funny combinations or different formations that they run, but a lot of them are the same. So if you understand your team's offense, you get a good understanding of that. you can now start spreading that out to other teams' offenses, and it'll just play in the back of your mind when the games are going. When you acquire that kind of understanding, it becomes easy to figure things out as they're happening on the field, because we know how fast things can happen on the field. And if you get that kind of understanding, you just start moving to the ball, and then you start piling up those big plays. The most misused reps by a football player are the mental reps. Too often, guys let their minds wander around. So stay engaged, remain focused at practice. And another thing is going to happen to you too. You're going to start feeling really good about what you did at practice. You're going to start feeling real good about how prepared you are each and every week if you do this. All right. It's not physically hard for you to do this. It's a low impact way for you to get better. So give it a try. Start doing it at your next practice. Make it a routine. Say you'll do it for the next 4 weeks. Watch how you will find that you can't not do it anymore. This is just going to become a part of your routine. And eventually you're going to start to see those big plays are going to start compounding. You'll make one, then you'll make another, then you'll make 2, 3, 4 in a game. And that's how I've seen guys really take off. So as my grandmother would say, put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right. That's it for this Indy Drills podcast, man. Guys, watch games tonight. Watch the Baltimore Ravens take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And don't just watch it to see guys drip and swag. All right. After you're done with all that early on in the game, watch this game with a purpose. Like I said in last week's Indy Drills podcast, start trying to figure out the next plays that are going to be called by the offense, or watch the defense and try to figure out what coverage they were in. Watch this game with a purpose if you're a player or you're a brand new coach and you're trying to figure things out. Don't just watch games as a fan, because you're not a fan. You play this game, you coach this game, you train this game. Watch the game with a purpose, and you will see improvement in whatever it is that you guys are doing. All right. That's it for me. Once again, on the way out, 101 DB tips. This, you got to have this in your library. All right. If you got a library at home, you got a book stand, you keep books in your house, and I hope that you do. Reading is fundamental. You can't play defensive back and not have this book. You can't have other books in your house and you're a defensive back and you don't have this one right here. So hit the link that I'm going to have in the description for 101 DB tips, or go to 101dbtips.com. Check that out there. Also, the All Eyes DB Camp members area, now I'm up to about over 250 videos in there, explaining coverages, workouts, drills in there, breaking down technique of guys. I do that each and every month, every week in there. There's just so much in there for you to learn. So if you got a combination of a book plus the members area, you're accessing all of the knowledge that I have and use. And, I'm getting to be an older man here, and I've done a whole lot of coaching. You're getting all that. So if you're a guy in Minnesota, you're in Hawaii, you're in Brazil, wherever it is you're watching this from, and you can't get down to South Florida and do sessions with me, get the book or join the members area. That's why I did all this stuff anyway, because once I started doing all of the training, I would get messages, I'd get emails. Hey, am I coming to this place? Am I coming to that place? Well, I can't be at all these places, but a piece of me can go there with you through the 101 DB tips in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. And, of course, go ahead and stay on this channel. So subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a like, share the video. And if you're listening on one of the podcast streamers, hey, don't just follow us, rate the show. Ratings matter. All right. So if you think I'm good at this whole thing and you liked what you heard, give me that 5-star rating. Would greatly appreciate it. All right. That's going to be it for me. I'm going to go watch some football and enjoy the kickoff of the NFL season. So until next time, I'll see you guys. All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.